guys, so I have the sculpture room set up for you today. You can see that my classes yesterday finished their molds and covering it with plaster. It's really important that you have your name on your work with your class number. That's going to be important at the end of class to write that onto your workspace. So when you come into class, you're going to see all their stuff. Please don't touch it, even though it looks cool. The first thing you're going to get is a sheet of plaster, depending on what class is yours. So you're going to take a sheet of plaster, and if we run out of plaster during class, the sub can cut more from this box for you, but please don't help yourself. Next, you're going to put the plaster sheet onto the workspace, and you'll also need a form. So I have a form, a sheet of plaster, and a workspace. The last thing I need is an apron from the box, and then I'm just going to go to a table spot and get started. Table spots, I have them set up around the sculpture room. I know the tables look really messy. It's not an excuse to leave a mess. It's just that plaster is really messy and hard to clean. If we need more space, we can probably fit 3 people here at this table. Otherwise, let's go ahead and fit 4 at each table. If we run out of space, just ask the sub where to go. We can probably fit more of you in the table areas. So I'm ready to start my plaster mask. What you're going to start with first is the sheet of plaster. It would take me forever to cut you guys all these little strips. So guess what? You get to do it yourself. Start by cutting little strips about 1 inch wide. I like to double it up and cut 2 at a time. So you can see I pre-cut some strips and they're about 1 inch wide. Plaster is an interesting material that lots of artists like to use. When you put plaster in water, a chemical reaction happens and it starts to get soft and then it hardens. So be careful with the water. Be aware of your surroundings. You definitely do not want this water to get in this box. That would be horrible. All of this plaster would be ruined because it would start the chemical reaction. So instead, to help you out, just be conscientious and take a few pieces of plaster and just set them on your workspace because they'll be easier to access throughout the day, and you can always get more. So I'm ready to start my mask. I'm going to try and do this the best I can one-handed. So take a piece of plaster, dip it into your water bucket until it's completely wet. Walk it up the side of your bucket over the edge. This is going to get rid of any excess water. So you can see my piece isn't dripping right now. That's good. We don't want too much water. Use both hands, please. My other hand's just holding my phone, so use both hands. Otherwise, what happens, the plaster is going to stick to each other, almost like duct tape. Put it onto your mold, and then just start smoothing it out. Your first layer, you don't have to be that picky. The purpose of the first layer is to just add support to your mask. If we only did 1 layer, it would be flimsy and probably break. Today, you're going to try and add 2 to 3 layers. Do not add more than 3 layers. Otherwise, we'll be wasting plaster, which plaster is actually pretty expensive. Dip your second one in. Again, walk it up the side of your bucket, over the edge of your bucket until it's not dripping anymore. And it's really important when you go to add your second piece that you overlap. If you don't overlap, you're going to get a weak spot. And again, just smooth it down. You don't have to be too picky. If there's a little bump, it's fine. It's just the first layer. So I'm just going to continue these. My tip for the edge, get it as close to the edge as you sort of can. It's a little hard with one hand. Again, please use 2. But you want to make sure to cover this area too and along the edge. Don't leave that open. Otherwise, your mask isn't really going to be a mask. It's just going to be a blob. So you want to cover plaster all the way down to the edge. And what I usually do after getting it wet, I sort of just put it on sort of like right there. Hopefully that makes sense. When you're ready to start layer 2, after covering your whole entire form, I suggest starting at the top and working toward the bottom because otherwise you don't really know where you left off, because layer 2 will look an awful lot like layer 1. It'll just sort of combine right in. So work from the top to the bottom. The same with layer 3. When you get to layer 2, you want to spend a little more time smoothing it out like this, because it's going to give you a nice surface to paint on. If you leave it super bumpy and chunky, that's going to be hard to paint on, and you're going to get a little frustrated later on this project. You can see my hands are starting to get really messy. That's okay. It's plaster. It's actually going to make your hands feel really soft when you wash them. So you're going to keep going until you have 2 to 3 layers. At the end of class, or when you're done with that, just scoot it off to one side. And actually, sometimes what I do, I just fold my workspace in half. If your workspace gets like super wet, just get a new one. Put your mask on your workspace, write your first and last name and your class number. And then based on where your class code is, you're gonna walk this over to the drying shelf over here. Make sure it's not touching someone else's work, and the sub can help you organize if needed. Washing. And thanks for being such good listeners. Hopefully you are. It's really new, and I'm excited for you to learn how to do this, even with a sub. Sink number 3 and 4 are the best. Sink number 2 and 1 don't really work, and you can see where the garbage is. So plaster, super hard to get off, but just scrub with soap and water. You can even use the scrubby for your nails. This sink still needs to be fixed, so these are here on purpose to help control the crazy water problem. Dry off your hands, and of course it goes into the wastebasket. What I forgot to tell you is I would highly suggest cleaning your table spot first before washing your hands. And the sub will make sure that the tables are pretty clean, as clean as they can be with plaster. We choose our battles in art. And then once your table spot is clean, you can stay in here with class, or if the sub's okay with it, you can go next door and work on your sugar skull drawing or a sketchbook prompt. So thank you for listening today. I can't wait to see how you guys did. And when I get back next week, we will continue the masks.